think you can boss me around? I don't care who you are. I'm done listening to your lies. Don't you dare talk to me that way. You're about to learn exactly why I'm not someone you can mess with.
The courtroom cameras rolled, capturing a tense hush that settled like a fog over the audience as Karen Thompson entered. At 320 pounds, the self-proclaimed real estate mogul exuded confidence, convinced her expensive attorney had armed her with an invincible legal strategy. But what she didn't know, what nobody could anticipate, was that the next 3 minutes would dismantle everything she had built, shattering her reputation and ambition in one merciless display of judicial authority. Karen's eyes locked on Judge Judy Scanlon, with the kind of arrogance reserved for people who have bullied their way through life. Her voice, loud, commanding, dripping with contempt, broke the silence. Listen, Grandma, you're overrated and everyone knows it. I've seen your show. You peaked decades ago. Maybe it's time you retired and let someone who actually understands modern business handle things. The courtroom froze. Cameras tilted, crew members paused mid-shot, and the audience seemed suspended in disbelief. What was about to unfold would become one of the most unforgettable moments in television history. The ultimate collision between entitlement and authority. Judge Judy's eyes, sharp as surgical instruments, narrowed. Seasoned lawyers had felt this look, the gaze that can make even the most confident attorneys rethink their life choices. And now, Karen, with all her wealth, size, and bravado, was about to discover firsthand why arrogance has consequences. This wasn't merely a case about a failed property transaction. It was about the inevitable downfall of those who wield power without ethics. Karen's career, meticulously crafted to intimidate and exploit, was about to implode on national television. Her face would be broadcast across 340 million screens. A cautionary tale etched into the annals of courtroom history. Lisa Chun, the young plaintiff, clutched her folder tightly, shaking but resolute. At 28, she had spent years saving for her first home, only to be confronted with undisclosed structural defects, black mold, and a legal nightmare she never anticipated. The $8,500 lawsuit Karen filed threatened to destroy Lisa's dream and her financial stability. Yet here she sat, facing the embodiment of justice herself. Karen had built her empire on fear. She had perfected a methodical intimidation strategy, using her size, her booming voice, and her polished appearance to overwhelm anyone who dared oppose her. Expensive suits, designer shoes, and vanity license plates were all armor in her calculated performance of dominance. Her business, once known as Hutchkins Properties and now Thompson Realty Group, masked a dark history of predatory practices and federal convictions, but Judge Judy had seen it all before. Before Karen even opened her mouth, the veteran judge had already identified discrepancies in the submitted documents, uncovered criminal records, and recognized the pattern of exploitation that had defined Karen's career. Every threatening text, every harassment tactic, every hidden structural defect was a thread in a tapestry Judge Judy was ready to unravel before the world. The case initially seemed mundane, a small claims dispute over a property purchase gone awry. Karen claimed Lisa had breached a contract and caused her emotional distress. But beneath the surface, this confrontation was about morality, justice, and accountability. Karen had zero intention of selling an honest home. Lisa, desperate to secure a safe property, had unknowingly stepped into the trap of a seasoned predator. Karen's preparation for the courtroom appearance was meticulous. For weeks, she rehearsed her defense, polished her arguments, and visualized herself triumphing. She believed her confidence and business acumen were enough to intimidate not only Lisa but also Judge Judy. Yet she completely underestimated the judge's ability to detect deception, her decades of experience allowing her to see the truth through bluster, tone, and body language. As Karen strutted to the defendant's table, her posture screamed dominance, her briefcase clutched like a weapon. She looked at Lisa with disdain, ready to lecture, to condescend, to command respect through intimidation alone. But the courtroom's energy shifted as Judge Judy took her seat, calm, commanding, and impossibly precise in her assessment of the situation. "Miss Chun," Judge Judy began, her voice crisp, unwavering, You are suing Mrs. Thompson for $8,500 for harassment and a return of your earnest money deposit. Explain what happened. Lisa, holding her folder of inspection reports and legal documents, detailed the horrors she discovered: cracks in the foundation, hidden mold, electrical hazards, plumbing failures, and a roof needing near-complete replacement. She explained Karen's relentless harassment, threats, workplace visits, constant messaging, and $3,000 in legal fees she incurred just to defend herself. The audience listened, rapt, as every word added weight to the impending reckoning. Judge Judy turned her attention to Karen. The temperature in the room dropped, a silence heavy enough to feel physical. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, voice cutting, "did you disclose the defects to Miss Chun before she signed the purchase agreement?" Karen, blinded by arrogance, responded with her rehearsed speech, ignoring the question. "Your Honor, the real estate business is complex. Buyers must perform their own due diligence." Judge Judy's eyebrow rose, a subtle warning recognized by viewers as the prelude to disaster. "Mrs. Thompson," she interrupted sharply, "I did not ask about complexity. I asked a simple question: did you disclose the defects or not?" Karen's irritation bubbled, her condescending tone escalating. "If you'd let me explain," she began. Judge Judy leaned forward, slightly deadly calm. "Excuse me, Mrs. Thompson, did you just tell me to let you finish? Did you just imply I don't understand how things work?" Karen rolled her eyes, the fatal misstep. The courtroom collectively inhaled, knowing the tipping point had arrived. "Listen, Grandma, you're overrated," she said, delivering the words that would mark her downfall. The room held its breath. Cameras zoomed, audience members froze, and even Lisa's shaking hands paused mid-grip on her folder. Judge Judy, after decades of dissecting deceit, smiled faintly, an expression so subtle yet lethal if foretold total professional annihilation. "Mrs. Thompson," Judge Judy began, her voice ice-cold, "you just made the biggest mistake of your life." Asterisk. Judge Judy opened a thick folder, her fingers brushing the edges with deliberate precision, the kind of motion that carried authority and quiet menace simultaneously. Karen Thompson's smirk began to fade as the audience realized this wasn't going to be a routine courtroom session. The folder contained the full extent of Karen's history, a dossier of deceit, manipulation, and criminal behavior meticulously compiled over decades. "Karen Marie Thompson," Judge Judy read aloud, her voice measured but piercing, "formerly Karen Marie Hutchins. Convicted of federal real estate fraud in 2015. Sentenced to 16 months in federal prison for falsifying property disclosures. Selling homes with known structural defects and defrauding 12 victims. Primarily young first-time buyers who trusted you with their life savings." A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. Even the production crew, hardened by years of capturing chaos, felt the weight of the revelation. Karen's confident posture began to crumble. Her jaw tightened. The bold jewelry and designer suit she wore felt like meaningless armor against the onslaught of truth now being delivered. Judge Judy continued, her tone unwavering. "After your release in 2017, you moved to a new state, changed your business name from Hutchins Properties to Thompson Realty Group, and resumed your predatory practices. The State Real Estate Board has received 8 formal complaints about your business, all involving undisclosed property defects, 6 specifically targeting women of color whom you apparently believed would not challenge your threats or lawsuits." Karen's lips quivered as she opened her mouth, trying to interject, but Judge Judy raised a single hand, a universal signal in that courtroom that interruptions were not tolerated. The power dynamic had shifted entirely. The predator had become prey. "You are not a real estate professional, Mrs. Thompson," Judge Judy said, her gaze unflinching. "You are a predator. You use your size, your voice, and your intimidation tactics to exploit those who are too inexperienced or financially vulnerable to fight back. You select your victims with calculated precision, hide defects, and employ harassment as a tool to enforce compliance. And now, here you are, audacious enough to call me an overrated grandmother?" Karen's breathing quickened. She tried to maintain composure, but the cracks in her armor were visible to every camera in the room. Makeup streaked under the pressure of sweat. Her posture, once rigid and commanding, slumped as her mind raced for a way out. Judge Judy continued with surgical precision, presenting the evidence piece by piece. She outlined Karen's patterns, misrepresented foundation integrity, concealed black mold, defective electrical systems, plumbing patched temporarily, and cosmetic updates designed to hide serious hazards. Every sentence hammered home the extent of Karen's deception. Lisa Chen, seated at the plaintiff's table, allowed herself a quiet exhale. Relief mixed with lingering fear. She had survived months of harassment, and now justice was not only in sight but unfolding before millions of viewers. Her hands, still trembling, gripped the folder of inspection reports that had once felt like her only shield. Judge Judy paused briefly, scanning the courtroom, ensuring the gravity of the moment had settled in. "Do you understand why we don't tolerate this behavior, Mrs. Thompson? Because people like you think rules, ethics, and accountability are optional. You believed your size, your voice, and your designer suits would protect you. You believed your criminal history and past frauds were irrelevant to the present. You were wrong." Karen's attempts to interrupt dissolved into stammered protests. "Your Honor, it's in the past. I've changed." Judge Judy's expression hardened. "Changed? You called a 70-year-old federal judge an overrated grandmother because I dared to question your business practices. That is not change. That is arrogance wrapped in audacity. Change does not involve bullying, defrauding, or threatening vulnerable people. Change involves accountability, which, for the record, you have avoided your entire career." The tension in the room became almost tangible. Audience members leaned forward in their seats, glued to the spectacle. This was no ordinary courtroom drama. This was a meticulously choreographed moral reckoning. The energy was electric. Each word. Judge Judy spoke a scalpel cutting through layers of deception and entitlement. Judge Judy presented the financial and emotional toll on Lisa Chen. The young woman had spent months fighting off threats, enduring workplace visits, late-night texts, and legal intimidation. $3,000 in legal fees, sleepless nights, anxiety, and a crushed dream of home ownership, all inflicted by Karen's predatory strategies. Judge Judy laid it out plainly, connecting the dots for everyone watching: the predatory behavior, the harassment, and the audacity to sue for $8,500 on top of it all. Karen's arrogance, once towering and impervious, had evaporated under the weight of scrutiny. Her eyes darted nervously around the room, seeking an ally in her attorney. But the silence from the legal team confirmed the inevitable. There was no escape from the verdict that was forming before them. Judge Judy's tone shifted slightly, becoming almost conversational, but the menace never wavered. "Let's be clear, Mrs. Thompson. You thought your previous conviction was something you could walk away from? That your schemes could continue under a new name, targeting new victims? And now, in this courtroom, in front of millions, we are exposing that fallacy for everyone to see." She paused to let the weight of her words sink in. The cameras captured every twitch, every sign of panic on Karen's face. The audience, both live and at home, felt the tension building to a crescendo. Karen's reputation, her career, her carefully constructed image of invincibility was unraveling thread by thread. Stitch by stitch, Judge Judy turned her gaze to Lisa Chen. "Miss Chen, you have endured months of harassment and intimidation from a woman who believed she was above the law. Today, we're going to right that wrong. Today, we are going to remind everyone watching that entitlement and arrogance cannot override ethics and accountability." Karen's face had turned pale, her previously commanding voice reduced to nervous murmurs. Every statement Judge Judy delivered pushed her closer to professional ruin. The courtroom was no longer a place of negotiation. It had become an arena where truth and justice were ready to crush the weight of deceitful audacity. Judge Judy's next move was decisive. She recounted Karen's business patterns: 47 property transactions in 8 years with at least 23 involving undisclosed defects, predatory targeting of inexperienced buyers, aggressive harassment tactics, and exploitation of legal loopholes. Each revelation landed like a hammer, leaving Karen increasingly defenseless. "This is not conjecture," Judge Judy stated firmly. "These are documented facts, Mrs. Thompson, facts that demonstrate a deliberate and sustained effort to exploit those who trusted you for financial gain and personal power. And yet, you had the audacity to question my authority, to mock my experience, and to attempt intimidation in my courtroom. Do you understand what you have done?" Karen's lips parted, but no words came out. The silence was deafening. Cameras lingered on her expression: shock, fear, disbelief, all painted across her face in real time. Judge Judy leaned forward, her tone icy yet precise. "You will have the opportunity to speak, but understand this. The evidence, your history, your behavior, all of it will define the outcome. You walked into this courtroom thinking size, wealth, and bravado would protect you. You were wrong, and the world is about to witness the consequences." The tension in the courtroom had reached a fever pitch. Every viewer, every witness, and every participant knew the next moments would seal Karen Thompson's fate. A fate born from her own arrogance, recklessness, and blatant disrespect for authority. The courtroom felt electrically charged. Every breath held by the audience as Judge Judy leaned back, surveying Karen Thompson with the precision of a predator assessing her prey ironically. A predator now caught in her own snare. Karen, once the embodiment of dominance, now trembled under the unflinching gaze of someone who had spent decades dissecting deceit. "Mrs. Thompson," Judge Judy began, voice calm but deadly, "you have presented yourself here as a successful, powerful businesswoman, confident in your knowledge and authority. Yet, in less than 3 minutes, you have revealed exactly who you are: a fraud, a bully, and a predator disguised in designer suits." Karen's hands shook. Her expensive briefcase, once held with commanding authority, now rested awkwardly on the table, a symbol of her crumbling confidence. She opened her mouth to respond, but Judge Judy's next words cut through the tension like a scalpel. "You have targeted young, inexperienced buyers, particularly women, exploiting their trust and naivety for personal gain. You've concealed structural defects, hidden mold, and misrepresented electrical systems. You have threatened your clients when they tried to protect themselves. You have spent years perfecting the art of intimidation, and today, you discover that arrogance has consequences." Karen's lawyer tried to interject, stammering about contract obligations and due diligence, but Judge Judy raised a hand, the ultimate courtroom shutdown. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Every camera zoomed in. Every microphone picked up the faintest sound of Karen's heartbeat, or at least it seemed that way. The atmosphere was tense enough to make the air itself feel heavy. Judge Judy opened another folder, sliding it forward with a kind of precision that communicated both authority and inevitability. "Let's examine the timeline, Mrs. Thompson. 6 months ago, you identified Lisa Chun at an open house. She was young, financially stretched, and eager to buy her first home. Perfect prey, wasn't she?" The courtroom murmured. Even Karen's attorney looked uncomfortable. "You painted yourself as a mentor," Judge Judy continued, her voice slicing through Karen's defense. "A guide for the inexperienced. You showcased charm, offered advice, and feigned generosity. And yet, behind this facade, you knew the house had cracks that could swallow savings, mold that could harm health, and an electrical system poised for disaster. And when your victim uncovered the truth, you did what you do best. You threatened her, harassed her, and attempted to coerce compliance through intimidation and fear." Karen's breath caught. Her attempts at calm authority were now unraveling. Each word from Judge Judy chipped away at the foundations of her constructed empire. The cameras caught every nuance: the widening eyes, the nervous twitch, the shallow breaths. Lisa Chun, meanwhile, sat a little straighter. She had endured months of stress, harassment, and sleepless nights. And now, in this arena of justice, her courage was mirrored by the authority of the woman presiding over the case. Judge Judy paused, letting the weight of the evidence settle in the room. Then, with the calm patience that had made her legendary, she dropped the next bombshell. "Mrs. Thompson, you once served time in federal prison for similar conduct. You were convicted of real estate fraud. And yet, you returned to the industry, changed your business name, and continued your predatory practices. Do you understand the gravity of this pattern? That your behavior isn't isolated, but systematic? Corinne's voice shook as she muttered, "I've changed. I'm different now." Judge Judy's stare hardened, sharper than any courtroom gavel. Changed? You called a 67-year-old federal judge an overrated grandmother because you believed your size and your voice could intimidate me. That is not change. That is entitlement wrapped in audacity, fueled by arrogance. You haven't changed a bit. The audience gasped collectively. Corinne's confidence had evaporated. Her image as a formidable businesswoman lay in ruins before the watching world. Every word Judge Judy spoke exposed not just Corinne's deceit, but her audacity to think she could challenge authority without repercussions. Judge Judy then addressed Lisa Chen directly. "Miss Chen, you have faced threats, harassment, and manipulation from someone who believed rules didn't apply to her. Today, you stand not just as a plaintiff, but as a symbol. A symbol of what happens when integrity confronts entitlement and justice is administered with precision." Asterisk Corinne, unable to hold her composure any longer, leaned back in her chair. Her hands gripped the edge of the table as if it could anchor her to the ground. Sweat gleamed on her forehead, and her carefully applied makeup was beginning to streak. For the first time, she looked small, vulnerable, and utterly powerless. Judge Judy began to lay out the financial consequences of Corinne's actions. You demanded $8,500 from Miss Chen, on top of the stress and harassment you inflicted over 6 months. But your predatory practices have a price. Mrs. Thompson, your behavior is documented, your pattern undeniable, and your reckoning unavoidable. Karen tried to interject again, but Judge Judy's hand rose, her gaze freezing every word before it left Corinne's lips. Enough. This isn't negotiation. This is accountability. You believed that size, wealth, and bravado would shield you. You were wrong. And now the truth of your actions will be exposed to every person watching this courtroom today. The camera operators leaned forward, capturing Corinne's every reaction. Her smirk had vanished, replaced by a mixture of panic, disbelief, and shame. The audience sat in stunned silence, realizing they were witnessing the apex of a moral and judicial confrontation, arrogance versus accountability, entitlement versus integrity. Judge Judy then presented the ultimate evidence: Corinne's meticulous tracking of her victims, her aggressive follow-ups, the deliberate concealment of property defects, and her systematic intimidation strategies. Each revelation was a hammer blow, dismantling Corinne's defenses, leaving her exposed to both the law and public judgment. Corinne's lawyer finally whispered something, but it was too late. The room had shifted. Karen Thompson was no longer the predator. She had become a cautionary tale in real time, and everyone in the courtroom, as well as millions watching at home, knew it. Judge Judy's next words cut through the silence like a gavel striking steel. Mrs. Thompson, do you see now what happens when arrogance meets justice? When entitlement confronts experience? When predation encounters accountability? You are about to witness, live, the consequences of your choices. And let this be a lesson to anyone who believes they can intimidate their way through life without repercussions. Corinne's composure had completely crumbled. Tears welled in her eyes, her voice now barely audible, as she realized the magnitude of what she had provoked. She had walked into a courtroom expecting victory, armed with confidence and bluster, only to find herself facing a reckoning, meticulously orchestrated over decades of legal expertise. The tension was suffocating. The audience leaned forward, silent but absorbed. Every second, every word, every glance from Judge Judy compounded the pressure, preparing for the final act, the ultimate, devastating takedown of Corinne Thompson. Asterisk. The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on Corinne Thompson. Her confidence had been stripped bare, her carefully curated image shattered, and her breathing came in shallow, nervous gasps. For the first time in years, she felt what it was like to be powerless, exposed, and utterly at the mercy of someone who had mastered the art of authority. Judge Judy's gaze remained locked on her, unyielding, precise, and cold. Mrs. Thompson, she began, her voice calm but carrying the weight of absolute judgment. "You have had the opportunity to explain yourself. You have had the chance to justify your behavior, to plead your case with the same arrogance and bluster that has carried you through life. Yet every word you have spoken today has revealed the same truth we already knew, that you have not changed." Karen opened her mouth, attempting to protest, but Judge Judy raised a hand. A single gesture froze Karen mid-sentence. The audience leaned forward in collective anticipation. The room seemed to shrink around her. Her once dominant physical presence now felt laughably inadequate under the weight of accountability. "You believed your size, your voice, and your suits would intimidate me," Judge Judy continued. "You thought calling me an overrated grandmother would diminish my authority, that your arrogance would mask your deception. But what you failed to understand is this: authority is not measured by age, wealth, or volume. Authority is measured by experience, integrity, and the ability to see through lies, and in that, Mrs. Thompson, you are utterly exposed." Karen's hands trembled, her lip quivering. Sweat ran down her temple, leaving streaks through her carefully applied makeup. She had imagined this courtroom as her stage for triumph, a place where she could showcase dominance over a naive plaintiff. Instead, it had become a stage for her own professional and personal destruction. Judge Judy turned to the audience, her voice carrying a subtle, devastating finality. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to witness exactly what happens when arrogance meets accountability. This is not just about one property, one buyer, or one lawsuit. This is about a pattern of predation, harassment, and fraud. Mrs. Thompson has been exposed for what she truly is: a bully, a predator, and a fraudster with a history of victimizing the vulnerable." Karen's attorney whispered something frantically, but Judge Judy did not flinch. "No, we will not negotiate morality or accountability. Mrs. Thompson, this is not a debate. This is a reckoning." Judge Judy began methodically detailing the financial and emotional damage Karen had inflicted on Lisa Chun. She described the $3,000 in legal fees, the sleepless nights, anxiety, and the nightmare of dealing with threats, harassment, and intimidation. She emphasized that the $8,500 lawsuit Karen had filed was not only unjustified, but emblematic of the entitlement and greed that defined her career. Karen's face went pale. The courtroom cameras captured every flicker of fear and disbelief as Judge Judy continued. "Let's be precise. The foundation cracks, the mold, the electrical hazards, and the undisclosed repairs were deliberately concealed. Your behavior isn't accidental, Mrs. Thompson. It is intentional. You selected your victims, targeted their vulnerabilities, and exploited them without remorse. And now, your arrogance has brought you here, to face the consequences of your actions." Lisa Chun allowed herself a quiet exhale, gripping her folder tightly. She had endured 6 months of harassment, intimidation, and sleepless nights, and now the person responsible for her nightmare was being dismantled piece by piece. Her courage, patience, and determination had brought her to this moment, and Judge Judy was ensuring it counted. Judge Judy's gaze intensified, and the courtroom seemed to shrink around Karen, Mrs. Thompson, in just a few minutes. "You have gone from someone who believed she was untouchable to someone completely exposed. Your criminal history, your predatory practices, and your audacity to insult me, calling me an overrated grandmother, have all been laid bare for the world to see. You are about to witness the consequences of your arrogance, and it will be absolute." Karen's attempts to defend herself dissolved into stammered murmurs. Her voice, once commanding and aggressive, was now a trembling whisper. I didn't mean disrespect. I've changed. I was just passionate." Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. "Changed? You called a 70-year-old federal judge an overrated grandmother because I asked a simple question? You used your size, your voice, and your intimidation tactics to try to bully me the same way you've bullied dozens of vulnerable buyers. That is not change. That is entitlement, ignorance, and a refusal to accept accountability." The tension reached its apex. The cameras captured Karen's transformation, her composure gone, her face flushed with panic and tears beginning to streak her makeup. The courtroom audience was silent, utterly captivated. Millions of viewers at home would later watch this moment, witnessing the unraveling of someone who had believed themselves invincible. Judge Judy then delivered the verdict with the weight of inevitability. Judgment for the plaintiff, Lisa Chun, in the amount of $8,500 for the return of her earnest money deposit and reimbursement of legal fees. Additionally, Mrs. Thompson, you will pay Ms. Chun $5,000 in punitive damages for your pattern of harassment and predatory business practices, bringing the total judgment to $13,500. Furthermore, all evidence from this case will be forwarded to the State Real Estate Board and the Federal Trade Commission for immediate investigation into whether you have violated the terms of your release and engaged in fraudulent behavior once again. Corinne's shoulders slumped. She broke down completely, sobbing openly as the reality of her downfall hit her. Every ounce of arrogance, every attempt at intimidation, every calculated plan had collapsed. The gavel came down with absolute finality, marking the end of her dominance and the beginning of her public reckoning. Judge Judy's closing words cut through the room like steel. You're dismissed from my courtroom. Mrs. Thompson, use this as an opportunity to reflect on respect, integrity, and humility, qualities that apparently remain foreign to you. Perhaps by the time you're 70, you will understand that calling someone an overrated grandmother is not an insult when that grandmother possesses more knowledge, experience, and moral authority than you could ever dream of achieving in your entire career. The courtroom erupted into a mixture of gasps, murmurs, and stunned silence. Social media would explode within hours. The hashtag overrated grandma trending worldwide, with millions sharing, commenting, and analyzing every moment of Corinne Thompson's spectacular downfall. Within 48 hours, Corinne's real estate license was suspended. The FBI launched an investigation into her business practices. Former clients came forward, her business shuttered, and bankruptcy loomed. Lisa Chun finally breathed, her nightmare resolved, and the young designer became a symbol of courage and integrity, proving that accountability could prevail even against the most entitled predators. Judge Judy's courtroom had delivered justice. Integrity had triumphed, and Corinne Thompson's era of arrogance and exploitation ended in humiliating, irreversible defeat, forever captured in the annals of television history. The courtroom had emptied, yet the echoes of Corinne Thompson's downfall lingered, reverberating far beyond the walls of Judge Judy's set. Television screens across the nation replayed the moment she called a 67-year-old federal judge an overrated grandma, and millions witnessed firsthand the consequences of arrogance, entitlement, and deception. Social media exploded in real time, hashtags trending, and clips circulating endlessly, each viewer marveling at the meticulous dismantling of someone who had believed themselves untouchable. Corinne Thompson's life had transformed overnight. Her real estate empire, carefully constructed over 8 years, crumbled under the weight of evidence and public scrutiny. The suspension of her license by the State Real Estate Board was just the beginning. Federal investigations were now underway, probing not only her current practices, but any repeat offenses since her release from prison in 2017. 23 former clients came forward with complaints, each adding layers to a legal avalanche that threatened to bury her completely. Within a week, her office was shuttered. Social media, once a tool to flaunt success, became a battlefield of condemnation, flooded with thousands of messages exposing her predatory behavior. Meanwhile, Lisa Chun's life began a slow but meaningful recovery. Her $13,500 judgment was more than financial recompense. It symbolized validation, justice, and the restoration of dignity after 6 months of harassment, anxiety, and sleepless nights. The young graphic designer's story quickly became emblematic of courage triumphing over exploitation. Local news outlets celebrated her determination, while social media hailed her as a symbol for standing up to bullies who believed their wealth and size made them invincible. Job offers arrived, design contracts flowed, and eventually, she purchased a new home, this time from an honest, transparent seller. Completing a personal arc from vulnerability to empowerment, legal experts dissected every second of the courtroom showdown. Law schools incorporated the case into ethics courses, emphasizing the importance of integrity, transparency, and the protection of vulnerable clients. The Curran-Thompson laws were proposed in multiple states, introducing stricter penalties for professionals who preyed on clients with limited experience or resources. For aspiring real estate professionals, the episode became a cautionary tale. Deception and bullying would be met not only with legal consequences, but with widespread public scrutiny that could permanently tarnish reputations. Judge Judy's actions in the courtroom became a lasting lesson in authority, patience, and precision. Her dismantling of Curran-Thompson was not driven by anger or theatrics. It was a surgical execution of justice, a demonstration of how experience, preparation, and moral authority could confront deception with surgical accuracy. Millions watched as integrity overpowered intimidation, as expertise dismantled arrogance, and as patience crushed entitlement. The lesson was clear: no matter how large, loud, or aggressive a person may seem, the truth has a way of emerging, and the consequences for violating it can be swift and absolute. Curran-Thompson, once the embodiment of confidence and control, was now a study in humiliation and collapse. The designer suits, the bold jewelry, and the aggressive posture that once signaled dominance were meaningless against evidence, experience, and moral authority. The meltdown she experienced on national television, tears, trembling, and sobs captured a universal truth: arrogance without accountability is inherently fragile, and those who believe they can intimidate or deceive without consequence are often the first to fall. The public response reinforced the societal impact of the case. Social media users celebrated the notion of justice prevailing, sharing clips, commenting on the importance of respect, and warning against predatory practices in business. The courtroom drama had transcended entertainment, sparking discussions on ethics, professionalism, and the long-term consequences of exploiting others for personal gain. The hashtag overrated grandma trended globally, ironically cementing Judge Judy's authority while mocking the audacity of Curran-Thompson. In a world obsessed with power, social media attention, and surface appearances, the story reminded viewers that credibility and integrity remain irreplaceable currencies. For Lisa Chen, the outcome was more than monetary, it was transformational. Beyond purchasing a new home, she gained confidence, resilience, and the knowledge that standing up to injustice could yield results. Her experience inspired friends, colleagues, and strangers alike, showing that courage, preparation, and perseverance could overcome intimidation, threats, and the abuse of power. She became a symbol of empowerment for first-time buyers and young professionals, navigating industries where expertise and experience often collide with opportunistic predators. As for Curran-Thompson, the repercussions continued to unfold. Bankruptcy loomed, legal actions multiplied, and her personal and professional reputation lay in ruins. The lessons of the courtroom were now reality. Arrogance, deception, and predation had consequences that extended beyond the immediate verdict. Every social media post, every news segment, and every shared clip reminded her that public accountability can amplify the repercussions of private wrongdoing, transforming personal failure into a cautionary tale for millions. Judge Judy's legacy, reinforced by this episode, became a permanent example of authority and precision in action. Her courtroom was more than a set. It was a crucible where entitlement, arrogance, and deception met experience, integrity, and accountability. Every viewer understood the central lesson: disrespect, fraud, and intimidation will always meet resistance when confronted by expertise, preparation, and moral authority. The story of Curran-Thompson's downfall became timeless, studied, shared, and remembered as a pivotal example of justice delivered with both rigor and clarity. Asterisk in the aftermath. Society reflected on the broader implications. Real estate boards tightened regulations, aspiring investors and agents reconsidered ethical boundaries, and professionals in all industries recognized that exploitation carries risks, not just legally but publicly, socially, and morally. The narrative became a modern parable. Power and intimidation may offer temporary advantages, But respect, transparency, and accountability create enduring success. The final scene of Karen Thompson's story, captured for posterity, was both somber and instructive. She had arrived at the courtroom believing her dominance, wealth, and aggression were invincible. She left humbled, exposed, and legally accountable, a cautionary figure whose arrogance had directly led to her professional and personal unraveling. The world had watched, learned, and reacted a rare moment where televised justice intersected with societal reflection. And Lisa Chun, the young woman who had endured harassment and intimidation, emerged victorious. Not merely in the legal sense, but in the moral, emotional, and societal sense. She reclaimed her life, her homeownership dreams, and her dignity, proving that courage, truth, and preparation are always worth the risk, even against the most formidable adversaries. In the end, the story of Karen Thompson versus Judge Judy was no longer just a televised case. It became a cultural milestone, a testament to accountability, the power of authority, and the ultimate triumph of integrity over arrogance. Millions would watch, share, and remember, and one lesson remained crystal clear. In life, as in Judge Judy's courtroom, respect isn't optional, and neither are the consequences of forgetting it.